Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I have basically been working on this video all week long for you, and I've actually made 6 different DIYs inspired by The Grinch because it's one of my all-time favourite Christmas movies, as well as being Tommy's. So I thought I would, you know, in secret make up some Grinch inspired DIYs and then decorate his computer room when he was at work as a sort of surprise for him. So I thought today I would bring you the DIYs so that you could see a full tutorial of each piece that I made, and if you want to recreate any then you can. And then tomorrow I'm going to bring you like a more of decorate with me video, showing you some other Grinch inspired things that I've bought in stores, as well as kind of decorating the room and that sort of stuff, so then you can see the final product with how my DIYs and store-bought things have been implemented together to make a Grinch inspired room. I don't know what's happened, but I seem to have different Christmas decor themes in every single room at the moment. So I've just got a bit nuts this year, and yeah, I now have a Grinch room as well in my house. So if you want to see how I made the DIY pieces, then just keep on watching. So DIY number 1 is how I made this fuzzy green furry bauble. I basically just took some of this green faux fur, which I got from a local craft fair. You can find bright green fur in your local haberdasheries or on eBay, and I just had this piece kicking around for ages, and that's actually what inspired this video. So I took a polystyrene ball, which I actually got from Poundland in their kind of Christmas crafty section, and then I cut out a square of that faux fur in the green colour. I made sure to cut along the backing only so that I didn't have loads of bits of fur hanging around. Then I just pumped loads of hot glue in and scrunched the whole thing around the polystyrene ball until the faux fur lay flat. Once it had, I used one of these bauble kind of hook things, which is actually just from a Primark bauble which I DIY'd previously, and hot glued that into place and then stuck a red bow on top to finish it off. Moving on to the second DIY, I made this Grinch inspired gnome because Scandi gnomes are all in this year, and I've been loving them for quite a few years now, and I figured I know I could make a Grinch one. So I actually just took a sock and cut off the top end and kind of half of the heel. I then inserted just this old glass jar, which I actually used for like lazy garlic, and it was just the perfect size for this DIY, so I just used that. It acted as like a base as well as a weight, so I just liked it. I then put stuffing all the way around that jar in between the layer of the jar and the sock, just so it was nice and padded and you couldn't feel that there was actually a glass jar inside. To seal all that in, I just used an elastic band around the top. You can also use a hairband if you want to, but you just want to secure the top so that, you know, the stuffing and stuff doesn't come out. To make the beard, I just used a little offcut of that faux fur. This was actually just a bit I cut off of the square when it was a little bit too big for the bauble, and I just hot glued that into place around about halfway up of the jar. I then made sure it was really secure by pumping more hot glue on until it was then attached. To make the hat, I just took some of this red fabric and I cut out a large triangle. I then hemmed the bottom just using hot glue by pumping the hot glue out, folding it up and sticking down the fabric. I did this on both pieces of the triangles. To make it into a hat, I just hot glued on the right side so that, you know, the raw side of the hem was facing down, hot glued the triangle shape and then stuck the other piece so that the raw hem was sticking outwards, so that when I turned it the right size way around, everything like nasty and all the horrible seams and everything would be on the inside, and then we'll be left with a nice finished hat. So I just hot glued all the way around the triangle, pressing down the fabric just to act as the seam. You can also sew this. I probably would have preferred to sew this, but I can't quite get to my sewing machine right now because everywhere is covered in gifts, so the hot glue trick had to do. I just used my scissors to poke out the end to make it nice and triangle, and then once that was done I just slipped it over the kind of elasticated bit at the top and then used hot glue to seal it all the way around the base so that I could just see the bottom base bit of the jar. I then just made sure to hot glue like the kind of top of the hat down, and then just hot glued around all the sides. To make the nose, I took some of this cotton fabric and I ended up doing a little stitch all the way around in an oval like shape. I made sure to then pull it quite tight to make a little bag like thingy going on, and then I took a small amount of like stuffing, popped that in to make the oval. I then took my needle and thread and then pulled it tight to kind of encapsulate all of that kind of stuffing inside, then wrapped the cotton around to secure it, and then I tied that off into a knot. I then chopped off all of the back, like just the excess stuffing and, you know, fabric there, just so that it could lay flat, and then I just hot glued onto the back of that, stuck it on just between the hat and the nose, and kind of just hot glued it down into place. To add a little bit of extra colour to its nose, I just took some chalk pastel and a little paintbrush and just kind of dusted that on to give it a little bit of an extra glow. For the third DIY, I actually made this WHOVILLE sign. So in order to make this, I actually took this sign from Poundland, which I DIY'd back in October for part of my kind of Halloween DIYs. You can find arrow signs in Poundland kind of all year round, but I just reused this one because I had it sitting around and I thought, why not? So I painted one of the arrows in a red, one of them in a bright Grinch green colour, and then one in a white as well. I just used normal acrylic paint to do this. It took about 3 layers to make it fully opaque because mine were kind of black and white, but yeah, you might have to do some layers on yours as well depending on what design is on them. On the red one, I wrote out the word Mount Crumpet using a Posca pen. It didn't quite sit well on top of the kind of acrylic paint, so I actually went in and used this oil-based paint pen to go in and do the rest of the writing. I'll leave you here with a bit of music so you can see all the other fonts and stuff that I did on the other 2 arrows.
And some kind of love, my friend, I pray it will never end. Do you like to be here too? It's Christmas and outside snow's glistening. It's just you and me tonight. I'll spend all this Christmas with you. Oh, it's such a charm, got you up in my arms. There's nobody at the door. You said I wish this will never be over. Darling, it's time for your present. Come over here. Now it is time to get out in the snow.
Once I had all of the arrows painted, I then just laid them out on this piece of wood that I had. This was just a scrap piece of wood that I had kicking about. I was going to leave it wooden originally, but then I thought I could spice it up a little bit and paint it as like a candy red and white stripe. So using some acrylic paint, I just painted on some red stripes and then painted on white stripes in between, just using a very thick paintbrush just to make sure that they were all even. Once I had the stripes all then dry, I just used some hot glue and just hot glued the arrows onto the sign. The top one being Mount Crumpet, the middle one being WHOVILLE, and then the bottom one being the Grinch's lair, just because I wanted them pointing, you know, the right ways and being quite accurate, because we all know the Grinch's lair is on Mount Crumpet. You know, I thought about it. Anyway, so the fourth DIY is actually this Grinch sign. It's almost like a wreath. I don't know what you'd call it, so I just said it was a sign, but I think it's more a wreath. Anyway, I actually use this out of a foam pizza base, just like the ones you get in the cook your own pizzas at home. And I painted this one in a limey green, mixing a forest green and a yellow together to make the perfect Grinch green colour. I then sketched out with a pencil the Grinch's face, and I actually just used like the new kind of Dr. Seuss inspired one. I don't know, it's kind of creepy, but it works, you know, it works. So I just used a Posca pen to fill in all the black lines on that, and then I just sketched in loads more of the details, just freehand as I kind of went along. To make the eyes yellow, I just used this chalk paint pen, which I actually got from Amazon, and I just painted the eyes in with that, and it sit perfectly, so I'm really happy with the way that pen worked. Then I went back in with that Posca paint pen in the black again, sketched on a few more little kind of designs, a few little more details, and filled in the eyes. To make the like nice fuzzy bit around the kind of wreath sign thing, I actually took a green carrier bag and I just cut it into strips. Once I had it in strips, I then folded it into like a kind of fan concertina type thing, and then using a needle and thread, I just posted that through just so that I had this fuzzy, buzzy looking carrier bag string thing. I then just hot glued that all the way around the edge of the sign wreath thing and I just hot glued, stretched out, hot glued, stretched out, hot glued, stretched out until I got all the way around the whole entirety of the sign. I did originally want to do this in a lime green ribbon, but I didn't have any, so a carrier bag had to do, but I think it turned out pretty well, you know. For the 5th DIY, I actually made another one of those signs, but I made it as the Grinch logo. So I painted a foam board again in a red acrylic paint this time, and then using the same green colour that I mixed up for the first one, I just painted the word the Grinch well, I painted the word Grinch first and then the word the on top. I just freehanded this basically. I had no idea how big or anything it was going to turn out, and I just copied kind of like the Grinch font like logo kind of thing going on. I don't know. I just painted it out basically, and I thought it looked kind of cool. Once I had Grinch like painted out, I then just wrote the word the with a tiny light hand, and then I thought it looked a bit plain, so using the end of a wooden spoon I just dipped that into the paint and made it nice and dotty all the way around the sign. So moving on to the last DIY now, I actually made a pom-pom garland. So I used this wool which I found in Poundland. This is on the 3 for 2, but I only picked up one because I have an awful lot of wool. Now when cutting the label off, I did accidentally cut through a big bulk of the wool, so I had a little kind of wool ball, but I just used a pom-pom maker that I got from Home Bargains, wound it around both of the sides, clipped it together, then used my scissors to kind of cut around in between the two little kind of makery bits to make the little pom-pom. Then took an off-cut piece of the wool, wrapped that round the pom-pom maker. If you've seen a pom-pom maker before, you will know how to do this, but still, I've just rushed through it quickly for you. I then just trimmed the pom-pom down, leaving the two bits of kind of wool that I wrapped round as the excess pieces. I basically just use these to tie on in a minute, so leave those pieces on there. Moving on to make the little fluffy pom-poms, I actually took the same green fabric that I used in the first two kind of DIYs, and I took these tiny little squares. Now I just tacked all the way around them, just tack it into the base, not the actual fur, just sewing in and out with a really loose stitch. Once I had that all the way around, what I then did was just pull tight so that all of the edges kind of bunched together and it made like a little pom-pom. As you can see here, pull it together, that's how you make a little furry pom-pom. To seal it all down, I just took the same kind of needle and thread that was still in it and then wrapped it round, securing all those loose bits together. Once I had done that a few times, it all kind of sealed itself together, and then I just kind of tied off the needle and thread just to make sure it wasn't there anymore. So I made about 4 of these ones in total, and I think I made 5 of the red pom-poms, but I took some of this red and white twine, laid it down, and then with the red pom-pom I just used those kind of long strings hanging out just to tie some knots around so that I was able to attach it to the garland. Once that was done, I then moved on and attached the little kind of green fuzzy pom-poms, and I just stitched those into place using about 5 or 6 stitches to keep them secure. I then just alternated between the red pom-poms and then the green fuzzy ones. Once that was all done, I just went back in and cut off any of the excess wool on the red pom-poms just so that it looked a little bit neater. So that's the end of today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I know I tried to hide like the final pieces just because I want you to be able to watch tomorrow's video and see how it's all come together with the final reveals of the pieces and how they've worked like in the room together, if that makes any sense. So you'll have to tune back in tomorrow to be able to see that. I hope you have enjoyed this video and maybe we've taken away a little bit of inspiration for some DIYs of your own, whether it's Grinch inspired or no. And yeah, let me know, by the way, do you love the Grinch or do you have another favourite Christmas movie? I'm in like Christmas movie marathon mode at the moment, so I'd love to hear your suggestions. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it and I will see you tomorrow for that Grinch decorate with me kind of video. Bye!